Hey guys, it's Tim coming at you with a Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite related video. And while we may touch on a similar topic to this as more information comes out, I think that it's best to get this one out of the way real quick. The infamous question that people have been wondering about this game since it was announced and even before that point. Is there a chance of X-Men or Fantastic Four characters showing up? Obviously, this relates to the fact that Marvel doesn't own the film rights to either characters, and Marvel tends to only want to push characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the fact that Marvel has essentially put a self-imposed embargo on themselves to prevent characters from the X-Men or the Fantastic Four from showing up in media outside of the comics and the films, primarily in animation. And obviously, there's been some bad blood between Marvel and Fox on the subject. But with that said, what are the chances of the characters actually showing up in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? Well, in an interview with Game Informer, when asked about whether the Fantastic Four or X-Men characters would show up in the game, creative director of Marvel Entertainment Bill Roseman said that the heritage is not lost. And also saying that he wants to make all Marvel fans happy, but this is a fairly innocuous statement that could mean anything from the characters showing up, to them having cameos or references, to just having characters in the game with similar playstyles to people who have played the games in the past. If we wanted to look deeper into the statement and look at the fact that the word heritage was used, we can look back at the heritage of the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise, which essentially began with the game X-Men Children of the Atom, which is the first game where Marvel and Capcom collaborated on a fighting game together and set up a lot of the groundwork and systems that would eventually lead over into the Marvel vs. Capcom series, which essentially started, again, with X-Men vs. Street Fighter. So the heritage of this series is very much ingrained with the X-Men, and they're essentially where this whole thing started. But going beyond the statement and looking towards Marvel's recent activity with games that they have worked on, there is actually a chance that X-Men and Fantastic Four characters can show up. In games like Marvel Heroes, Marvel Contest of Champions, and Marvel Future Fight, X-Men and Fantastic Four characters do actually show up as playable characters in the game. Now, at the very least, Marvel Heroes did begin before Marvel started doing these embargoes on Fantastic Four and X-Men characters, but they still show up and have been added and supported since the embargo began, especially with their animation department. So it's not entirely out of the question that we'll see these characters at some point, which leads to how I believe that they'll be added into the game, especially with Marvel and Capcom's recent approaches to adding characters into their game series. And it's likely that they'll be post-release DLC. The initial on-disc released characters will likely be just from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the X-Men will be added in later. Obviously, DLC characters are no stranger to this series, as Jill and Shumagorath were this in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but it makes a lot of sense considering the model that a lot of fighting games are using these days in terms of how they release their characters. Games like Killer Instinct, Mortal Kombat X, and most notably here, Street Fighter V, all follow the format of adding more and more characters over time. And Marvel, with their games, essentially follow the same format as this. It allows players to get acclimated to the cast that they already have and to the game itself, but still be able to play as characters that they want to over time, as well as giving the dev team more time to work on how the characters work and balancing the game around them. So by this logic, it would make sense that the MCU characters would be first, because those are the ones that Marvel really wants to promote with this kind of game. But they also know that people would want X-Men and Fantastic Four characters to be in the game, so essentially it's a sort of put your money where your mouth is kind of situation, where they'll put them into the game, but you'll either have to purchase the season pass or buy them individually to prove how much you want them to be in it. Obviously not the ideal situation for gamers, but that's how I think that the X-Men and Fantastic Four characters will be implemented into the series. But what do you guys think about this? What do you think are the chances of the X-Men and Fantastic Four characters showing up in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? Do you think that they'll be in the initial release? Do you think that they'll be DLC down the line? Maybe a few months after? Maybe a year after? Well, let us know down in the comments. If you like what you've seen here, feel free to subscribe. And until next time, this has been Tim from the Hybrid Network, signing out.